Alright guys, so today we're going to be talking about the best phones to buy with SD card support. I'm going to throw in some old flagships and some mid-rangers, and I'll let you guys know which one I would personally buy on the list. But I get this question a lot because you can't really find phones these days, especially the premium ones with SD card support, and that's typically because they're trying to sell you up on the higher gigabyte model. So let's go ahead and jump in. My first phone, and this is the one that I would personally buy if I needed a phone with expandable storage. I would get the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, hands down, old flagship, and it is just a beast of a phone with SD card support. So this phone is very nice. I think still looks pretty good. Stainless steel design, so premium design, IP68 dust and water resistant. You also got the built-in stylus as well too, which works really well. Check out my Note 20 Ultra versus S23 Ultra comparison, and you got the big display, 6.9-inch display, dynamic AMOLED, 120 hertz HDR10 plus, 1440p, 496 for the PPI, big beautiful boxy display. But the only thing is you can only use 120 hertz at the full HD, so just do note that. This phone got its last major OS update with Android 13 One UI 5, and it's currently getting security patches, so that's really good. It has the Snapdragon 865 chip, which is an extremely good chip, very good. So I don't care what you're doing, browsing the web with a whole bunch of applications open, PUBG runs at 90 frames. This thing still blows through anything, so it's a very fast phone. Like I said, micro SD card support. The base storage is 128 gigs and 12 gig of RAM, but if you buy this, you're gonna have to get it refurbished. You can get the 256 gig 12 gigs of RAM, then throw a SD card in there and you'd be really good. You also have a stereo speakers which sound really great, no headphone jack, NFC is on board, all the flagship stuff, under the display fingerprint sensor, Samsung desktop support. You also have a really good camera setup in my opinion, 108 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel periscope telephoto with 5 times optical zoom and a 50 times hybrid zoom, 12 megapixel ultra wide 8K 24 video, and 10 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K 60. Cameras are great. Again, watch that comparison with the newest Galaxy phone and you'll be kind of shocked. 4500 milliamp hour battery, 25-watt wired charging, and then wireless and reverse wireless charging. A beast of a phone you can find easily for around 300 bucks. Next is going to be the LG V60. This is really good. I think this is like my second option here. This is a really good phone to buy. You can find this for 200 bucks, and I do have the case. I am going to buy the case for you guys because I know you guys been wanting to see that. But this is an awesome phone that also has SD card support, and like I said, really cheap. Aluminum frame, IP68 dust and water resistant as well too. It's got the POLED HDR10 plus display at 6.8 inches, 1080p, 395 for the PPI. Really nice and beautiful display. And you also get the dual screen attachment, and again, I'm gonna pick that up for you guys to show you guys. But basically think of it as two phones, or think of it as sort of like a folding phone. It got Android 13 as well too, and it's actually still getting security patches. So to my surprise, for how long I don't know, but it is getting security patches, and you have Snapdragon 865 chip on here. So again, just like the Note 20 Ultra, this is a beast when it comes to performance. It pretty much just flies through Android games. It does not matter. It's a very fast phone still. SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM on the base model. And then you also have on here a headphone jack with a quad DAC, so you got the combo going on with the V60 as well too. Stereo speakers sound really good on here. You also have under the display fingerprint sensor, and you do have a triple camera setup. It's a 64 megapixel standard, 13 megapixel ultra wide, and then a 0.3 depth sensor. It shoots in 8K 30. 10 megapixel selfie shoots in 4K 30. The V60 still to me takes some pretty good shots. I think only thing you start to see its age when you take it in sort of low light settings, but if you're outdoors, it takes really great pictures. You also have a pretty good battery life, 5,000 milliamp hour battery, and you also have wireless charging. So the V60 is a beast, and like I said, it's super cheap for the power and amount of stuff you get with this phone. Now, next is the Samsung Galaxy A54. So I know that, I was pretty harsh on this phone when I got it. And again, I wouldn't buy this phone over any of the old flagships on this list, but a lot of people were asking me questions about this phone. Well, man, I still really like the phone. Guys, get the phone. If you like the phone, I didn't completely hate the phone. I just said I wouldn't buy it over old flagship. And it does have, SD card support, which I know a lot of people like. It is going to get software updates as well too. So again, I don't completely hate this phone. It was just in comparison to, what I would buy, right? But it's not that bad. So it's got a plastic frame on here. It's actually have a glass back on here as well too. So it does have somewhat of a premium feel to it. It's IP67, dust and water resistant. It's Super AMOLED, 120 Hz HDR10 plus, 1000 nits peak brightness at 6.4 inches. 1080p 403. The display on here was fine. It just had a little bit of chunky bezels, but other than that, it was a pretty decent display. It had 120 hertz again, so pretty smooth. Android 13, One UI 5.1. My main issue with this phone was the chip. It's got the Exynos 1380 processor. Now, compared to the older flagships, I thought the chip was just okay. Sometimes it felt a little slow-ish, but it gamed fine. It was able to do basic stuff fine. So if that's all you're trying to do on your phone, this phone would definitely be able to do that. But like I said, if you want to like game, then definitely get an older flagship. But this does have SD card support. Like I said, it's a newer phone as well too. Base storage 128 gigs, 6 gigs of RAM. Then stereo speakers on here sounded decent. No headphone jack. It does have NFC, under the display fingerprint sensor. The camera on here, it's okay. It's a 15 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro. I wasn't super impressed with it. It shoots in 4K 30, 32 megapixel selfie, also shoots in 4K 30. Like I said, it takes decent photos for a mid-ranger. I would just put it like, if I was going to give it a scale, probably like a C+. But yeah, cameras are fine. I think for the average person, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. And battery life was actually pretty good on here. It's a 5,000 milliamp hour battery, definitely lasted a full day with 25 watt wired charging. So again, the A54 is a decent phone if you're looking for a mid-ranger and you want software updates with SD card support. Then definitely check this one out. Next is the Galaxy Note 10 Plus. This is still a really impressive phone, and I really like the phone. It's come down in price a lot. It's $250 now. And it's a pretty good device. It's got aluminum frames, IP68 dust and water resistant. Again, you have the S Pen, dynamic AMOLED, HDR10 plus at 6.8 inches, 1440p, 498 for the PPI. This phone's last major OS update was Android 12, One UI 4, and believe it or not, it is still getting security patches. I got a security patch, I think for like May or something like that. And you also have the Snapdragon 855 on here, which actually still does a fantastic job with gaming. It's still very, very fast playing PUBG, Call of Duty Mobile, pretty much anything. It's still way faster than something like the A54. So take that into consideration. What I like about this phone is you have micro SD card support with 256 gigs of internal storage and 12 gigs of RAM. You also have stereo speakers on here as well too, which are really good. And I think the cameras have aged pretty well. Like I said, these old flagships do a fantastic job outdoors. It's only when you get sort of like a low light sort of thing compared to the new phones, then you starts to get a little soft. But this still takes pretty good photos. 12 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel telephoto, and then a 16 megapixel ultra wide. 0.3 depth sensor shoots in 4K 60. 10 megapixel selfie cam shoots in 4K 60 as well. I think overall the camera on the Note 10 Plus is still really good, especially as a point and click. I think you can see the shots here. I think it still takes pretty good shots. Under the display, fingerprint sensor is on board. Really, all of your flagship stuff is still here. Samsung desktop support, reverse wireless charging, all that good stuff is still here. Battery life on the Note is still pretty decent. I can still get a full 6 hours of screen on time out of this phone. 4300 milliamp hour battery, pretty nice charging speed at 45 watts, and then wireless and reverse wireless charging with a very nice design. Still has a very modern looking design. And last is the Galaxy S20 Ultra. This is still a fantastic phone and definitely a good phone for you guys who like to do a lot of zoom shots. And honestly, this phone is just more comfortable than the Note 20 Ultra, so that's also another alternative if you don't like the boxy feel. So this has the aluminum frame, glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant. Again, another massive display at 6.9 inches. Dynamic AMOLED, 120 Hz HDR10 plus, 1400 nits peak brightness, 1440p display, 511 for the PPI. Just a big, beautiful display. Like I said, very easy to hold. Even if you have smaller hands, it's still very easy to hold. And again, you can only use 120 Hz at the full HD. This phone got Android 13, One UI 5.1, and it is getting security patches as well too. This phone, again, Snapdragon 865 chip, a beast of a processor, still able to blow through games on this phone. You can play PUBG, 90 frames, all that good stuff. Micro SD card support is on board, 128 gigs of internal storage and 12 gigs of RAM. And then pretty good stereo speakers on here as well too under the display fingerprint sensor. The highlight with this phone is definitely the cameras. It's a 108 megapixel standard, so you get really good detail with this phone. And you also have 48 megapixel periscope telephoto, 4 times optical zoom, 10 times hybrid zoom, all the way up to 100 times zoom. And then you have 12 megapixel ultra wide 0.3 depth sensor, shoots in 8K 24, 40 megapixel selfie, it shoots in 4K 60. The S20 Ultra still takes fantastic photos, especially outdoors. And if you guys don't believe me, check out my comparison I did with the S23 Ultra. I did it with all my old flagships, and just check it out. So you'll be surprised at how good these cameras still are in 2023. And this phone has pretty good battery life, 5,000 milliamp hour battery, 45-watt charging on here, wireless, reverse wireless charging. Again, another phone that can easily do 6 hours of screen on time. So like I said, a lot of, I don't recommend a lot of these like really cheap phones. I would rather you get an old flagship or a pretty decent mid-ranger like the A54. That's, I think, it's not gonna completely be useless in a year. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.